Well, hey everyone, it's Chris from ChrisBeatCancer.com, and today's interview is one that has been a long time coming. It's Dr. Ruth Heidrich. Some of you know her from Forks Over Knives. She and I have been corresponding for, I guess, several months now, trying to get our schedules together to do this interview. And let me just, if you don't know who this is, let me just give you a little intro, okay? She's a vegan triathlete. She's the winner of over 900 trophies, probably close to 1,000 now, 6 Ironman Triathlons, 8 Senior Olympics gold medals, 67 marathons, including Boston, New York, and Moscow, and the Great Wall of China. She holds a world fitness record at the famed Cooper Clinic in Dallas, Texas, and she was named one of the 10 fittest women in North America. But wait, there's more. She's also a breast cancer survivor. She was featured in Forks Over Knives, as I mentioned. She's authored several books, A Race for Life, a book called Chef, which is a cookbook, Senior Fitness, and a book called Lifelong Running. And all of these accomplishments occurred after she adopted a low-fat vegan diet and reversed her stage 4, count them, 4 breast cancer. So this is an amazing lady, and you can understand I really had to be persistent to get Dr. Ruth here to do this interview. So welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I am so glad to be talking to you. So can we start? There's so much we can talk about, and let me just say, for anyone watching, behind Dr. Ruth here are all her medals. And there's a ton of stuff back there. So look, see all my medals behind me? Wait, no. So,
when you get old enough, all you have to do is enter.
I guess so. So, let's start with your cancer story, because obviously this is probably
where the whole journey began.
Changed your whole life, right? So, what year was it? And tell me what happened.
It was 1982, and I was really involved in my career as a logistician in the U.S. Air Force. And as a female management level, in a time of affirmative action, my career was just taking off. I was being groomed for the highest levels of the Department of Defense. I had choice assignments. I was just having a ball. Everything seemed to be going perfectly. I was also a runner. I had started running back in 1968 when I read Kenneth Cooper's famous book, Aerobics. Back then, nobody had ever heard the word aerobics because he had just invented it. And of course, now everybody knows it means exercise of the major muscle groups to the extent that you're getting the aerobic effect. You're training your systems and you're breathing hard and benefiting from the exercise. When I read that, I thought, wow, this sounded just perfect. So I put the book down. The next morning I went out and ran a whole mile and thought, wow. And I was 33 years old at the time, 1968, and started running every day because I was hooked immediately. I loved it. After that first run, I thought, wow, 33 years old and running a whole mile. And then it got to the point where I kept thinking, I don't want to turn around yet. Just one more block. And I was doing this before going to work. And so I gradually increased the distances, and I felt so much better. I could handle the stress. If you can imagine a female in a military macho environment, everybody assumed I was a secretary. And of course, I was very sensitive to this, my stature and rank as a GS-13 logistician. And in fact, generals would say, could you get me a cup of coffee, please, when I was about to go on stage and give a briefing. So, anyway.
Interesting time, I'm sure.
Oh, it was. And then got to the point where I was running further and further, and somebody said one day, there's a race on base, you ought to enter. And I thought, why not? So I got to the race site and looked around, I was the only female, military base and running back. And by this time it was 1973. And so running hadn't really taken off. It was starting, and that's why the first race that the base had ever held. So anyway, I look around and think I'm the only female, and oh boy, everybody's going to be watching me fail, or I'm going to be last, or I'm not even going to be able to finish. So I thought, what am I doing here? And I was about to slink away when the gun went off. And so I just, took off, running as fast as I could and thinking, what have I gotten myself into? And of course, I was running faster than I had been doing in my daily runs. And I just, I kept it up. Finally, the end was in sight. I crossed the finish line. I thought, wow, I did it. And I looked around. I wasn't even last. I thought, wow, this is incredible. And then the award ceremony, and they called my name. I went up and got a first place, naturally, the only female, and came home and thinking, wow, I wonder where there's another race. So that started me with the racing. And so I had been running 14 years at the time. I was getting ready for work, lots of travel, lots of pressure, but I was really enjoying it. In the shower, I felt a lump in my breast. And I had had mammograms, and they had all been clear. And I thought, wait a minute, oh boy. So I immediately got to see a doctor, and they did a biopsy, and it came out negative. But he said, you have very dense breasts. Well, we know now that if you're eating a high animal product diet, which I was, your breast tissue is very dense. Anyway, negative. They said, come back next year and we'll do another mammogram. This went on for 3 years until 1982, when the lump was so large, and I was lying down on the exam table, and a new doctor walked in, took one look at me and said, why did you wait so long to come in? I looked down and I saw this thing sticking up and thought, oh my God. Got me up off the table, took me by my elbow, marched down, made an appointment, scheduled this lady for surgery immediately. And I said, okay, and I want to watch the surgery. And he said, no, you don't. No. Yes, I do. I want to see what's going on. I've had negative mammograms, and people were telling me there was nothing to worry about, and now you're obviously worried. So he said, well, if you're sure you want to watch it. I said, yes, I do. So I was talking to him as he was cutting away. Wow. And he cut deeper and deeper. I had local anesthesia, so, I was not hurting at all. And he cut deeper and deeper, and he pulled out a piece that was the size of a golf ball. And he put it on the table, took a scalpel, and cut it in half, and said, uh-oh. And I almost came up off the table. I said, what do you mean, uh-oh? He swallowed hard. He said, you see these little granules that look like sand? He said, those are cancer cells that your body has tried to wall off. And my heart sunk. I thought, it can't be. No, this can't be happening to me. By this time, I had run several marathons and was fit and healthy. I was 47 years old. The peak of my career, and it just seemed like my life came crashing down. They did a frozen section and came back within a few minutes and said it's cancer, and turned out that they didn't get clear margins, that it had spread beyond that big, large chunk they'd taken out. So they immediately scheduled for more surgery and a referral from the surgeon to the oncologist. And I had 2 weeks in between to recover from the surgery and to get ready for the next stage, which would have been chemo and radiation.
What did they stage your diagnosis at that time? Stage 3?
Yeah, 4.
Stage 4.
Metastasis.
Right in the beginning. Yeah, okay.
It was clear because they ran all the tests. Anyway, this was in between the two doctors, and I was still recovering from the surgery when I hadn't gone back to work yet. And I was reading newspapers, watching doing things I never had time to do before. That was when I saw the Ironman Triathlon for the first time. And I thought, I can run marathons. I know how to swim. I've got a bike. I'm going to do the Ironman. And then it hit me, lady, you've just been diagnosed with cancer. Forget it. And I thought, no, I'm going to try. And I had kept on running every day, even after the surgery. And the other thing that happened right about that time was a notice in the newspaper. And it said, it was literally 3 lines. I still have it. Wanted women with breast cancer to participate in diet research study. And I looked at the number, and it was a local number, 262. It's Kailua, which is very close to where I live. I ran to the phone, got right through to Dr. John McDougall, and I'm talking to him. Yeah. And he said, yes, I'm conducting this study. And I said I had just been diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. He said, get your medical records, get into my office. I want to talk to you. So the next day, I'm in his office, and he's showing me the research that he has. It's not extensive at this time. Remember, 1982. My oncologist, when I did see him, said, that's ridiculous. Everybody knows diet has nothing to do with breast cancer.
Well, talk about the research a little bit that he showed you at that time.
He pulled out a file drawer, and he said, this is the section. It was about like 5 inches worth of files. They were animal studies, and they were epidemiological studies. And the ones like Ken Carroll's study that showed the higher the fat in different countries, the higher the rates of breast cancer. The animal studies that showed when they put rats on they implanted mammary tumors onto the rats, and then half of them they fed a high-fat diet and the other half a low-fat diet. The ones on the low-fat diet, the tumors shriveled up and literally fell off. The ones on the high-fat diet took off and spread. And I said, well, in my case, I know it's not diet because I eat a very healthy diet. And I'm referring back to my first university course in nutrition, which is where I was taught, we need good, high-quality protein that you get from chicken and fish, and low-fat dairy, which my dairy was so low-fat, it was carnation powdered milk. That's how it was. Yes. And I'm telling this to Dr. McDougall. He must have been thinking, this woman is crazy. She thinks that's healthy diet. But that's what they were teaching in nutrition and still do in most, unfortunately. So anyway, he convinced me to try. Actually, he spent 2 hours with me, 2 whole hours, showing me the studies. And, in Hawaii, there weren't a lot of women in that situation. Breast cancer diagnosis, no chemo, no radiation. And he said, you can't have chemo and radiation because I want to show it's the diet that made the difference. If you have chemo and radiation, people say, oh, well, that's what cured her. Anyway, I'm thinking, who do I believe? The oncologist or Dr. McDougall? And I thought, well, if the diet fails, I can always have the chemo and radiation later. So I went back. The first visit to the oncologist, I told him what I wanted to do. And that's when he said, he's shaking his head like, you're crazy. Well, actually, when I got home after that 2-hour visit with Dr. McDougall, my then husband said basically the same thing. That is ridiculous. That's BS. I gave you more credit. Now, bear in mind, at this point, I'm working on a PhD. He says, I gave you more credit for being intelligent than that. You fall into the hands of a quack. That's so obvious. And so there, I got no support whatsoever. So I started cooking the way I was told. It was strictly vegan. In fact, people have asked me, how long did it take you to go vegan? Or did you go vegetarian first and then vegan? I said it took me 2 hours, literally overnight. As soon as I went shopping, it was whole grains, brown rice, lots of fruits and vegetables. That was pretty much it. Yep. Oatmeal for breakfast in the morning. A few years later,
grains are unhealthy?
Yeah.
Haven't you heard?
Yeah. So I was eating that way, and he was eating his old steak and lots of butter with lobster and all these other foods. I tried to convince him that really this is pretty good. I was enjoying these foods. and made him some whole wheat pancakes with just the syrup and no butter. He took one bite and he said, "These taste like lead sinkers," and pushed the plate across the table. And I said, "That's it. I'm doing this alone."
I know
And
the feeling.
fortunately, I had the support of Dr. McDougall. He was teaching cooking classes, and I attended them and found that this opened a whole new world of fruits and vegetables I had never even heard of, much less tasted before. And then I started thinking about the Ironman, because there was another race that came. There was a race, a 15K, the week after my surgery. This is such a funny coincidence. I showed up at the race, and the surgeons, that there were two, who had operated on me, looked at me, did a double take, and said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm entered in this race." And they said, "Oh my God."
They were in the race.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And of course, back even then in 1982, there were still not too many women, so I was still hooked on doing lots of races. So what was the next thing?
So before we move on, will you talk a little bit more about your daily diet, like what it looked like, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, just a typical day?
Well, there is a before raw and after raw. Before raw, it was lots of brown rice, baked potatoes with nothing on them. They taste great, I found out. And sweet potatoes, yams, I really love. So I had those with dinner every night. My breakfast before going to work was a bowl of oatmeal with raisins or applesauce at first, apple juice. Then I discovered any kind of fruit juice worked. And then for lunch, I have just fruits and vegetables. I'd take them in a bag. By getting ready for the Ironman, I was biking to and from work. And so that was how I got part of that training in. So in my backpack, I'd load up with just mostly fruits, but tomatoes, carrot sticks, celery sticks, and baked small baked potatoes. You can bake a whole bunch of them in your oven at the same time and then use them as snack food or just as part of a regular meal. So that was pretty much it. My beverage was water. And shortly after that...
And dinner, what was dinner like?
Either the brown rice or the potatoes and a great big salad. Mm-hmm. Oh, after... Let me see. I went to Summerfest back in 1999, 2000, where I was asked to give a talk on going from cancer to the Ironman, skipping ahead a little bit, because you wanted me to talk about the diet. And so I ran into Doug Graham, and he was a raw fooder. And I listened to a talk of his. I read his book, Grain Damage, and thought, I'm going to try it. And he said, give it 30 days and see what you think. Well, my new husband, and I then tried it for 30 days, and we never even noticed when 30 days was up. We just found it so much simpler to not bother cooking. It was, again, just fruits and vegetables, lots of leafy greens. As I was learning more about the new nutrition and what Dr. McDougall was saying, and I met Dr. Clapper, met Dr. Neil Barnard. In fact, Dr. Barnard and I were on the same schedule in Dayton, Ohio. We were giving a talk there. And I had just written a book, A Race for Life, and I gave a copy to him, and he looked through it, and he said, I wish I could take you with me when I visit patients to show them how great this diet really is. But I started getting all kinds of questions on what do you eat? Just like you said, what's your dinner like? What's your breakfast? So I got a website, and on my website right now, Daily Vegan Diet. So it's pretty much raw. And I'm not raw because it's necessarily that much better. It's just easier. Yeah. It's faster. It's simpler. No clean up.
You don't have any problem with McDougall's
no
diet at all, do you?
No. In fact, it's perfect for people who are on the SAD diet, the standard American diet, to go from that to a McDougall high starch, which is extremely healthy. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it whatsoever. To try to get them from the SAD diet to raw, most of them turn away and say, forget it. But this way...
That's a major radical change, which I did that. That's actually what I did in the beginning. But again, I had a cancer motivation, so...
Yeah. Oh, it's a powerful motivation, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Gets your attention. Yeah. In fact, when I was in McDougall's office that time, I'll do anything. I'll do anything to save my life. And this is what he said to do. In fact, prior to that, I'd said it's too late. I've already got cancer. It's already spread all through my bones, and had one in my lung, and my liver enzymes were sky high. And he said, no, it's not too late. By changing your diet now, you're immediately empowering your immune system to fight the remaining. We remove the host tumor cells in the tumor itself. And now your body's immune system is now more powerful and can start cleaning up the rest of it. And sure enough, I had extreme bone pain. I mean, 2 o'clock in the morning, I had been given pills because of the pain, narcotics, and they didn't touch the pain. I would walk and just almost in tears. The pain was so bad. And within 2 weeks, that bone pain was disappearing. And the bone scans showed that the hot spots were disappearing. My liver enzymes normalized within 2 weeks. The tumor in my lung, just like the little sand, that the body had encapsulated those sand grains, did the same thing with that tumor in my lung. And so I then found out more about the Ironman, because I kept thinking about it. What if I wonder, oh yeah, because I had done the Honolulu Marathon, and that was the third part of the Ironman. It was started right here on Oahu, just a few blocks from where I am, was where the head office was. So I went down there and I talked to them and told them I wanted to do the Ironman, and found out at that point no woman as old as I, remember 47 years old, had ever done it. But I had never done a triathlon either, so I started the training. In addition to the daily running, I added swimming and biking, and started lifting weights for good measure. Joined a couple of groups, the running group and a swimming group, and learned how to, and did my first Tin-Man, which is a quarter Ironman, a month later. And then the next year I did a Tin-Man and a half Ironman, and got a first place in my age group, which qualified me for the Ironman. Because not every, you can't just enter any Ironman, you have to qualify. So in 1984, when I was now 49 years old, I did my first Ironman triathlon. I crossed the finish line and think, wow, now I have proven that this diet is not, it doesn't leave you wimpy and pale and the stereotype a lot of people have about vegans.
Yeah.
I was triumphant and powerful, and oh boy, it was launched. And I thought...
So you were 49 or 50 at that time?
49.
Yeah.
In 1984.
Yeah.
And thinking as I crossed the finish line, I have to do it again next year, because some people are going to say it's just a fluke, So
you gotta defend your title.
Yeah. And so I just kept right on with the training. Plus, I was enjoying the training. I noticed that I had faster recoveries. Like the next morning after the Ironman, you'd see people limping around and so sore and just barely able to move. They couldn't do stairs. And here I was fully recovered. In fact, I did a short swim afterwards. By this time, it had moved over to Kona. And it kept right on with my training. And one of the other great highlights of this whole career was that after my second Ironman, I got a call from Continental Airlines, sports promotion director. He said, I've read about your story, and we want to sponsor you. And I'm looking around, and athletes do anything to get a sponsor, and here he's calling me. And he said, don't they have an Ironman in New Zealand coming up? And I said, yeah, I think so. He said, why don't you enter and we'll sponsor you, pay for everything, free, everything. And so I thought, wow, fantastic. So, kept right on with the training. And then got a first place. Oh, I should have had it handy. I made the front page of the New Zealand Herald in 4-inch letters, Ruth, a woman of iron.
Awesome.
And a picture, a large picture, the whole front page practically of the New Zealand Herald. When I came back to Hawaii, went to Dennis's office, laid threw the newspaper on his desk, and he looked down at it, and he looked up at me. He said, don't they have an Ironman in Japan? And I'm thinking, look, I just did Kona in October. I just did an Ironman in New Zealand in March. And I knew that the Japan Ironman was in August. And I'm thinking, there's no way I can do another one so soon. And then the little voice in the back of my head said, look, do it. What are they going to do if you can't finish? Fire you? And I said, okay, I'll do it. So, again, kept right on with the training. And this diet was working so well.
And where were you in the cancer process at that point, after 2 years after your diagnosis? Had you had some scans or follow-ups at that point?
Right.
And what was the situation in your body?
Clear.
So it was all clear. How soon did you get the all clear?
Well, they were reluctant to say you're all clear because they didn't think the diet was, they weren't sure what was going on. So I never got an all clear.
Yeah.
It was, well, your bone scan is negative. Your liver enzymes are normal now. And the chest x-ray showed that tumor was encapsulated and it wasn't growing. So by 2 years, the measurement was still the same. So it was obvious they did not want to do surgery because it wasn't growing.
Yep.
So
within 2 years, basically, things had really turned around.
Oh, yeah, sooner than that.
Yeah,
I mean, almost immediately. It was amazing. And so I started getting a little more publicity, pictures and stories, and I was still seeing Dr. McDougall fairly often, and questions would come up. Where do you get your whatever? Fill in the blank. It was protein, calcium, essential fatty acids were not a big deal back then. Nobody really thought that much about them. And then Dr. McDougall said, you really ought to write a book. He was in the process of writing his first book, the McDougall Plan. Mm-hmm. And I was working with him, trying different recipes. And I loved editing. I'd always been good about writing and editing. So he gave me the manuscript to go through, and it was great, just perfect. I was really excited about his book. And he said, well, you ought to write one. He said, I tell women about breast cancer, and they think they either can't do it or it won't work or whatever. Here, it's worked. You ought to write a book. And I was so busy training and thought, I guess any normal off-the-street person would think, who's ever going to read a book that I write? And that's what I thought. You've heard about you have to have an agent, and getting a publisher is almost impossible for a newbie. Anyway, he kept after me to the point where he said, look, and this was a year later, he said, meet me at this software store. He said, this is the software you need. It is so easy. So I met him, and I learned how to do Word and started writing. And once I started the process, it kind of fed on its own, and I published the first, self-published, A Race for Life. And after I sold 10,000 copies, the full order was gone. Right about that time, I get a call from New York, Martin Rowe, Lantern Books. And he gave me a little background. He said, I've heard about your book, and we'd like to publish it. Wow! First Continental Airlines and now a publisher. You talk about making lemonade out of lemons and having your life turned around by a deadly diagnosis of breast cancer. How can this be happening to me? So part of this excitement and enthusiasm was in my book, and telling people, wow, this is, you got to change your diet. It's key. That is the basis, the foundation for everything else in your life. And so things were really going well. I did up to 6 Ironmans, and then I started doing a lot of traveling. By this time, I had retired and was doing long trips, like the Moscow Marathon, which was a real highlight of my life, flying all the way to Russia and doing 6 races in different parts of that country.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds really fun.
Oh, yeah. And running on the Great Wall of China. I mean, this is really living, I thought. And so when I turned 70, I got a call from Martin, and he said, look, you are the poster child for senior fitness. We need you to write another book on senior fitness. And I thought, oh, because what I was now very much aware of, the diet and cancer had up to this point been the original connection. Then I realized heart disease kills far more people than cancer does. And then there's diabetes, obesity, high blood pressure, osteoporosis, all these diseases that come along with cancer.
Western diseases.
Yeah, all of them, yep. MS, Dr. McDougall was doing his research in MS at that point, low-fat diet. And in my talks, I would start out, just like today, with breast cancer, but then I'd go into all these other things. And so I'd have the top 10 diseases and how a low-fat vegan diet can either reverse or prevent these top 10 diseases. So that was really, I had the foundation from my talks for my next book. So senior fitness when I turned 70. And then last year, I guess about almost 2 years now, I get another call from Martin. He says, you know, I've been thinking, you've been running for 45 years now. How about a book on how you did it, lifelong running? And I thought, you know, I remembered how much work it was, because it wasn't just writing what I thought and what I talked about. He would make me go back. In fact, Michael Greger, you know, Dr. Michael Greger,
yeah, absolutely,
was pulled in as an advisor and went through my manuscript, and I had to annotate every statement that I made.
Yeah, believe me, I know. It's painstaking.
It's hard work.
Yeah.
And you know, is it worth it? And I'd grumble and think, well, I've got to finish this book, and that's it. So when Martin came up with this idea of lifelong running, I'm thinking I'm going to go through the same thing again. And I thought, I don't have time. It's too much work. And Martin said, well, just think about it and let me know. Well, the next morning, I'm out on my run, and I'm thinking, you know, I could tell him this, I could tell him that. Started thinking about it. So I called Martin up, said, okay, I'll do it. You know, I'm thinking there's not that much to be annotated, because it's my own experience, what got me started running, what keeps me running, how the diet led to not only faster times and all these gold medals. You know, if you want documentation, you know, it's right there, right behind me. You know? And so I told Martin, okay. And then I get the call to be in Forks Over Knives, which was really exciting. And my cookbook, and in my talks, people would say, where do you get your protein? And so everything I'd learned is the first part of chef is an acronym for cheap, healthy, easy, and fat-free, or fast. Because being in the kitchen is really fun, it's quick, it's delicious. We have mostly the same things for all meals, and I never get tired of it. I never think, oh, oatmeal again, or because I do eat oatmeal, but it's raw. Yeah.
You just soak it? You just soak it overnight?
No.
Just eat it dry?
It's delicious. It's like eating cookie dough.
What do you do? What do you do? You take the oats, and then what?
It's the old-fashioned oats, and I sprinkle it over my large bowl filled with lots of leafy greens. This is the vegan diet on my website, the breakfast. A large, big salad bowl full of leafy greens, sprinkle the oatmeal on it, slice up a banana, mango or papaya. Living in Hawaii, I have access to the farmers markets.
Oh, boy. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
I live in Memphis. Okay.
Oh, boy. Yeah. Well,
yeah. There's no tropical fruit growing here.
Yeah, but there are other fruits. Apples and oranges work just as well, and I'm sure you can get foods imported.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You pay a little more, but it's worth it. And
so you mash it all up, or what, or just eat it?
I'm sorry.
How do you mix it all up? Do you mash it all up?
Yeah, I don't mash it. I sprinkle a whole bunch of cinnamon. I love cinnamon, and it's good for stabilizing blood sugar. For those people who are worried about, quote, sugar from fruit, nothing to worry about. But the word's out there that sugar's the culprit, and fruit has sugar in it, doesn't it? Oh, no. So anyway, lots of cinnamon because it really tastes good. And then the rest of my morning drink. My morning drink is a large mug, fill it with water, heat it, and put green tea, a green tea bag, a rounded teaspoon of 100% pure cocoa powder, which is kind of bitter. So then a little bit of stevia to sweeten it. It's my cocoa tea drink. The recipe's in my chef cookbook. And that's my morning beverage. So I'm getting a little bit of caffeine from the green tea and the cocoa. And getting my chocolate, what more could you ask for? So what's left, the dregs in the bottom of it, I pour over this big bowl of the greens and the fruits. And it's delicious. Sometimes I came across some figs the other day, so I cut up and added figs to it. I sometimes add kiwi fruit. It's whatever. Somebody had a bunch of pomelo. Do you know what pomelo are?
No.
They're gigantic citrus, like 3 grapefruits in one.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know what the other name is. There is a more common name. But they're yellow rind, and you peel them, and they've got the slices just like oranges or grapefruit. Anyway, they're big. And so they grow on trees here, and people, when it comes in season, they have so many they can't use them all, so they give them away. And whatever fruit you want to add is always delicious. But the leafy greens are really the mainstay for nutrition. You've got all your vitamins and minerals, especially the minerals. Calcium, people worry about calcium and osteoporosis or whatever, since you're not eating dairy, you got to have a replacement for that.
So what are the leafy greens you eat the most? Do you eat like romaine and kale and spinach?
Kale and baby kale, red kale. Here at the farmers markets, they have 3 or 4 different kinds of Chinese cabbage. Wanbok, bok choy. Even Costco has a big container of the baby bok choy. And I swear they snuck sugar in the soil because it is so delicious. It doesn't taste like a leafy green, like romaine is kind of bitter. Watercress, which does have kind of a tart taste. They have these great big bunches of watercress for $3, and it lasts us all week, having a little bit of that added to each breakfast. So, yeah, watercress, kale, spinach, bok choy, wanbok. I don't remember any more names, but
Swiss chard probably.
Yeah.
So here's a question: What did Dr. McDougall think about you doing all this intensive training in the beginning? Did he think it was a good idea or a bad idea?
He thought in between leaning towards negative.
Yeah.
He thought marathons were excessive. That
maybe too much strain on the body.
Yeah, we're not meant to. It's excessive exercise, but obviously I was kind of thriving. At one point I did 3 marathons in 3 weeks. Not by plan. I had qualified for Boston Marathon months before, and there was a marathon 2 weeks before, and I thought, I got to do that. Besides, it's training. So I did that one, and then shortly after that, a friend of mine was running her first Windward Marathon and said, could you please run with me? And I'm thinking, that's going to make 3 marathons in 3 weeks. Okay, I'll do it. So, the diet is that fantastic. I just can't rave enough about how people need to change their diet. In fact, I go out for my morning runs and I see people half my age. You know, I'm going to be 80 in a few weeks.
Well, let me just say happy birthday. Happy
thank you.
birthday. That is amazing.
And I see people half my age in really bad shape. And I talk to doctors, and they tell me, yeah, they have diabetes, high blood pressure, all these problems.
Yeah. Well, you know, the average life expectancy of an American woman is 80.
Yeah.
It's 80. And believe they're not just healthy and then die at 80, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
usually their health starts to decline in their 50s and 60s and 70s, and you know, by the time they get to their late 70s, it's
usually 30 years of all these drugs that they have to take to keep the blood pressure under control and control their diabetes. And I get so mad at doctors, they're not telling their patients that they ought to be changing their diet and not relying on drugs to handle their symptoms. It doesn't get to the cause. Yeah. It's really sad. Even shows like I hate to name names, the popular TV shows.
The doctors.
You know, the doctors and Dr. Oz. You know, here's a chance to educate the public. But they bring on guests that are promoting the paleo diet or that have found great new sources of protein, whey protein powder. And of course, we didn't even touch on the environmental effects of the diet, how none of this is sustainable, how we're fishing the fish out of our oceans. The whole network is going to collapse. Our ecological imprint on this planet is deadly, literally deadly. We cannot keep doing this.
Well, and beef is an incredibly, it's such a resource hog. I mean, it takes, I wish I knew these statistics off the top of my head. I'll add them below the video, but it takes many, many, many gallons of water to make, and tons of grain just to make a pound of beef. I mean, it's ridiculous how much food and resources it takes to make a pound of beef to eat. Yep,
that's the output from the front end. Look at the output from the rear end. What is it, 150 pounds of manure a day per dairy cow? It's something like that. Mm-hmm. And then you have these dairy farms with thousands of cows, and you have literally mountains of manure that are contaminating our streams and the groundwater.
Yeah, and they're loaded with antibiotics too. So all antibiotics are coming through in the manure and ending up in lakes and rivers. And it's a crazy pollutive industry.
Well, look at the rainforests that they're plowing under to make land available for grazing. Yeah, it's really
it's not good. But hey, this video where people are learning about it.
That's why, Chris, what you're doing is so valuable. You've got a great audience. You're going to reach people that have never heard this before. And here, you're a young man with colon cancer. I was middle-aged when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I can say after 33 years, I think it worked.
Yeah, I think you're in the clear.
I think, although, you know, if I went back to eating the SAD diet, I think those dormant cancer cells would then start thriving. They love you've heard the sugar thing, the cancer loves sugar. They also love cholesterol. Yeah. That's what their cell walls are made of. They need the cholesterol to grow.
Yeah, and they need iron.
If you're eating a low-fat or no animal food diet, there is no cholesterol in it. So it's their own liver that makes the adequate amount of cholesterol. So there's none left over for cancer cells. And you mentioned the fat. That's what makes the cancer cells thrive and suppresses your immune system. It's just such a perfect system, but I think the main driver, the reason why we're not getting on the bandwagon and everybody going along with us is there's no money in it. There's no money. Whereas there are billions of dollars to be made by big pharma.
In drugs,
if you get a diabetic, and with the medical system as it is now, they're on these drugs for the rest of their life. arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis. You know what it does to some people's hands?
I've seen it. Oh yeah, it's awful. They just get all gnarled up
and they can't use them. The pain and all these drugs. Oh well, don't worry. Here we have this new arthritis drug, and it's criminal. It really is. I wish we could launch a lawsuit and get somewhere with suing misinformation and going
so much out there.
Yeah,
the meat and dairy industry, the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, they're constantly just pumping out studies that are telling people they need to eat more fat and butter and animal protein, and of course drugs are the solution to all your problems.
Yeah.
And the truth is, we live in a Western country and we're eating a Western diet and we're suffering from Western diseases that many other countries have extremely low rates of because they don't eat the way we eat.
Yep.
Right?
And one that really gets a lot of men's attention is the first sign of heart disease. Do you know what that is?
It's this right here.
Yeah. ED. Exactly.
Yep. Erectile dysfunction is the first sign of heart disease.
First sign. And if more men knew this, they'd be thronging to this diet.
And how do they reverse it?
But what do? They're told, here's this drug, Cialis or Viagra. Take this drug and that'll solve your problem. What a teaching opportunity that is missed, mostly because doctors don't know this. Another sign that we're finding out that is not just the heart disease, but dementia. You look at, just like Dr. McDougall showed me, the rates of breast cancer in different countries correlated with their diet. Dementia, same thing. And that's what I think we ought to start paying a lot more attention to. Because what good is it if I, for example, am healthy from here on down, but I can't remember anything, and it gets so bad where I don't recognize people, and I can't think.
Oh, listen, we had a family member just a few years ago who had suffered from dementia, and his mind went and sort of Alzheimer's, and his body was healthy as a horse, right? It was just, which actually is not a great expression because horses have lots of health problems. Yeah. But anyway, his body was really healthy, but his mind was gone, and it was really difficult for the family because, he had to be in a nursing home and had to be cared for several years in this condition where his mind was gone, but his body was working just fine.
Yeah, and you talk about money. These nursing homes are not cheap.
Oh, no. I mean, it just drained everything he had.
Yeah, and our healthcare system is going to go bankrupt. They're talking about Medicare just can't pay for all these bills. These new cancer drugs, some of them $100,000 a month to keep a cancer patient alive maybe 18 extra days. And they're not comfortable. They don't enjoy it. They're suffering from all the side effects of the drugs. And yet nobody's telling them change their diet. I have talked to a few doctors and said, why aren't you telling your patients? Oh, they won't listen. Yeah. Just forget it. They won't listen. And some have said, I don't have time. My own oncologist, after I hit the 5-year mark, supposedly, quote, cured, I said, why aren't you telling patients this? Oh, I don't have time. My oncologist, by the way,
Also, it doesn't make me any money if they leave my office and never come back.
Yeah. He died at age 45 of a heart attack. Wow. My oncologist. And I remember seeing him for the first time, sitting in his office, leaning back in his office chair with his big pot belly, 40, he's 40 at the time.
45.
Really out of shape. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, my own oncologist. Yeah, so it's, I don't know. It's a battle that we've got to keep fighting. I think we're winning.
Hey, we're making progress. We're making progress. We know that. We know that. And the internet has been such a huge boom. YouTube and Facebook, and right? It's been such a huge help to spread the message that the body can heal, that it doesn't have to cost tens of thousands of dollars. It doesn't have to involve surgery, chemo, radiation. Like the body can heal almost any disease, but there's no way it's going to heal, unless you take some massive action. And in fact, it's going to save you money. My food bill is so much less than people who buy all these processed, refined foods with all that packaging. Yeah.
and a lot of it goes bad because they haven't gotten to it. It really does save a lot of money, not just in the food, but the doctor bills, and you have more energy, so you feel like exercising, so you're healthier from that point of view as well.
Is there any reason not to?
Let me think. Change. People have trouble changing. There's this normalcy bias that a lot of people have. They think, oh, well, I'm 51, I haven't had a heart attack, I'm healthy, and I'm going to stay that way. You know, it's until that day that something happens that they think, uh-oh. You know? And
and health declines very gradually. It's a very gentle slope, right?
Yeah.
Until you get to the edge, and then you drop off.
Yeah.
You know, then you've got a major disease to deal with.
Without the assets available to most people, because their doctors are going to say, oh, let's do this bypass surgery, we'll put a stent in there and that'll help, or we'll do these...
rip your chest open.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's really, really sad.
Well, listen.
On my website, RuthHeidrich.com, I have an Ask Dr. Ruth. And what I'm purposely trying to do, you know, I'm legitimate, but most people think of the other Dr. Ruth, right? Yeah. So I get all these questions.
You got a lot of sex questions.
Oh, some of them are pretty amazing. Wow. I can't even talk about them. They're just that far out. But I think here's an opportunity. You know, your problem could be helped by a little change in lifestyle.
Yep.
You need to get rid of that great big fat paunch, and your erections will get better, and women who are anorgasmic can start having orgasms again because the blood flow is required.
Yeah.
And if you're blocking that blood flow to even women, you know, most women aren't even aware of that. ED happens to them just as it does to men.
And can I just touch on this too, because if anybody's watching has never heard what we're talking about with the ED and stuff, the gist of it is when you eat a high-fat diet and high cholesterol, in blood levels of cholesterol, it clogs up the tiny capillaries in your sex organs and all over your body. But the tiniest capillaries are the ones that get blocked first.
Yep.
And when the blood supply is blocked to those, then you start having these little maladies, right? You have erectile dysfunction, or women can't have an orgasm, or whatever. So that's what's causing it. And so when you eliminate the fat from your diet, all the cholesterol and animal fats and all this junk, eventually your body kind of breaks down the accumulated deposits in your arteries and veins, and things start going backward in a good way.
Yeah, yeah. Those tiny capillaries are so small, they're one red blood cell width wide.
Yeah.
So any kind of cholesterol or fat molecule will block. It sludges the blood. Yeah. So even the larger capillaries and the small arteries get blocked. And it affects not only where we've been talking about, it affects your hearing, your vision. The blood supply to the retina gets blocked, and of course the brain, smell, the toes. This is why diabetics have amputations. Those capillaries get blocked to the toes, and the gangrene sets in because that poor toe can't get any blood supply. So there's just so many reasons.
So many reasons to do it. Well, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Ruth Heidrich. This has been so much fun. This is actually my first interview of 2015, so we're kicking it off with a bang. I'm so excited that it was you.
Me too.
Yeah, and I'm going to put links to your website, which is ruthheidrich.com. I'm going to put links to your books, the ones that are they all still in print?
Oh yeah.
Okay, great.
Well, the chef is only an ebook.
That's fine. We'll put put links to those to your books. Are there any other books that this would be great to close with, I guess, but are there any other books that you recommend that you haven't written that someone should read?
Oh.
Some of your favorites.
The China Study,
of course,
is a biggie. And then T. Colin Campbell is the author of that one. His follow-on was...
Hold. Whole,
what?
Whole.
Oh, yeah. I thought you were saying hope, and I knew it wasn't hope. Whole. Whole. Excellent book. McDougall's got, what, 18 books out now?
Yeah, I'll put all 18 of those now. We'll put his couple of his most recent.
He's working on a book. It's not out yet. Dustin Rudolph just came out with a book, The Empty Medicine Cabinet.
Wow, that's one I'll have to add to my list. Never heard of it.
Absolutely. We're bringing him out to Hawaii to speak next sometime. I started saying next year. It's this year. The Empty Medicine Cabinet. What a concept!
I love it.
From a pharmacist.
Oh wow!
Somebody
that's terrific.
Expect to promote. So, yeah, and it's out now. The Empty Medicine Cabinet. Brenda Davis and Visanto Molina, their series of books, going vegetarian first, then going vegan, and then going raw. Those books are all good. There are lots of them.
That's great. No, that's wonderful. We can give anybody watching this a really, really good start on their education with those 10,
Michael
10
Greger's nutritionfacts.org.
Great site.
3 minutes of really good information, useful to most people. He's incredible. So,
love him.
Yep, lots of people, and we need to get more on board. So I really thank you for doing this.
Well, thank you. I'm just so thrilled to be, to be in this movement with you, to be a fellow survivor with you, and sharing this just life-saving information. It's what a joy.
Yes. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Dr. Ruth. Okay, everyone, thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Of course, check out the links below. Check out Dr. Ruth's website. And please share this video. This is life-saving stuff. And share it wide. See you on the next one.